Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video you're going to find out how to mix your tech house tracks in under 15 minutes. We're going to do this tutorial in FL Studio, but even if you decide yourself to do it in Ableton or Logic, you can definitely translate this into your DAW. So if you watch this whole video, you're going to understand way better how to mix your tech house tracks properly, so definitely stick until the end. Also like this video and subscribe to my channel to not miss out any tech house production tutorials. First we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is mixing and why are we doing it in tech house productions? When you produce tech house, you have usually a lot of instruments playing, like hi-hats, claps, a kick and a bass, vocals, reverbs and all this kind of stuff. We need to make sure that we're finding a right balance, basically that none of the instruments is coming out way too much. We need to prioritize basically instruments. For example, vocals are way more important than the reverb of the hi-hats. So basically we need to make sure that there's a priority of lists and priority of instruments. The mixing process basically creates this perfect balance between each single instrument and each single aspect of your productions and brings it to a good level. So the first thing you need to consider when you actually start mixing your house music tracks or tech house tracks is the fact that it all comes down and starts with sound selection. You can have the best mixing skills in the world, but if the sound selection and the way how you produce the track is not good enough or it doesn't sound good, you can have the best mixing engineer or the best mixing professional. It's not going to make the track sound better. So definitely make sure first of all you focus actually on your productions, the right sound selection, the right melodies, the right bass lines, the right instruments, and then you can go to the mixing stage to make it more professional. To understand this whole process a little bit better, you need to basically make sure that you understand which of the elements you have in your tech house tracks is more important. For example, I would say that the kick and bass relationship is one of the most important elements. A lot of times, a lot of instruments like synthesizers, pianos or strings or stuff like that, they get side chained to the kick basically, because we want to make sure that the kick is punching through the mix, because the kick and the bass is exactly what drives every single tech house and house music track. The same as the vocals. So basically the vocals are, let's say, under the kick. I would say definitely the first priority is the kick, then the bass, then the vocals are coming, and then the rest like hi-hats and all this kind of stuff. And you need to bring them to a good level. I basically have this track here prepared for you, and we're just going to basically go quickly on it, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So let's start first with the kick and bass relationship. We're just going to mute all the elements and leave the kick and the bass here. So the first tool I'm using is the sidechain compression. So which means because the kick is very bass heavy and the bass line is also very bass heavy, we need to make sure that just one element is playing at a time. So we're going to make sure that the bass is, the volume is reduced every single time that the kick is playing. So for that, we're gonna use the plugin LFO tool. You can also use other plugins. This is a third-party plugin. This is the waveform on the right side from the kick. And basically we can make sure that the bass, the volume of the bass is ducked on exactly perfectly to the kick, okay? So like this. Don't do like this. Also not like this. Happy with this one. And then the second plugin to also make this kick-bass relationship more professional is to use a saturation tool, which could be, for example, the saturation knob, which is a free plugin. You can download that as well. Or in my case, I use the decapitator, which is also a saturation tool. So, and then you basically saturate the sound. You add basically frequencies which are not there yet. It just boosts the whole track and makes it seem louder. But the peak, the maximum loudness, the peak volume, the transients go through anyway. It's too much. Pretty happy with that one. You definitely have to use saturation on a lot of elements because saturation makes the track seem louder, but it isn't actually louder. You can use this for your bass channel, for your kick, for your vocals especially, because it adds more energy to the track with the same peak loudness. And we need to make sure with the mixing process that it's getting as loud as possible. The next plugin, which is really crucial, is the EQ. And the basics for every EQ is cutting away low frequencies below 150 Hertz and also cutting on top away frequencies which are not necessary. For example, everything above 15,000 Hertz. We're going to do this example based on the vocals because the vocals have a lot of low end information, what we don't want.
You can take my bass down low, low. You can have this treble if you give me some more. All I'm trying to do is bring you back.
The reason why we're cutting away those low frequencies obviously is because the bass line is already very, very relevant in those lower frequencies. If we have the bass and the vocals having the same frequencies playing in the same time in the same frequencies area, it's going to make it more muddy because we want to basically prioritize again. So we're going to cut away from a lot of elements. You can definitely use this on like reverbs as well, like cut away low frequencies from reverbs. And then I even cut away from the top end a bit because we want to create more space.
You can take my bass down low, low. You can have this treble if you give me some more. All I'm trying.
As you can see here again, it doesn't really change the sound a lot. Then the next very, very important plugin is the compressor, because each single element, especially for example hi-hats or the kick, they have transients. It basically ducks down the volume of an audio signal. Let's say we have the hi-hats here. You can see it's compressing almost minus 2 dB every single time the hi is playing. I'm going to bypass it now, which means there's no volume coming through. There's audibly not much of a difference. It sounds pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is that the transients on the audio is gonna not be as loud, which means that we can make this whole track louder. Basically, the reason why we do this is because we want to make sure that when we play this on club systems, that it has the same energy as the professionally released tracks. That's exactly the massive difference with mixing tech house or mixing, let's say, film music, because film music needs to be loud as well, but that can be adjusted as much as they want. Nobody's probably gonna play that live as much. And the thing is that the EDM tracks or house music tracks, they need to be really, really loud. The compression, the saturation and the EQ make a massive difference because it's basically going to be perceived louder. And again, the compressor is definitely used for a lot of elements. I use it for my bass to make the bass basically more fat and more energetic. It's actually sounding more quiet because this makeup gain is basically reduced a little bit, but which is the massive difference. It sounds more streamlined. The compression makes every single element stand out more. Don't overdo compression, because if you overdo a compression, it's gonna take away the life of every sound. Let's say we do it like that.
You can take my bass down low, low. You can have this treble if you give me some more. All I'm trying to do is bring you back to the hype. So can you bring this party on?
There's always a sweet spot, so definitely also make sure that you mute the plugin a lot of times, mute it as well, then listen to it, bring it to an extreme, bring it back to what it was before, and like that you can basically make sure that the compression is not overdone, but also definitely do it on a lot of channels. Then the next big topic in mixing tech house production is the mixing space. There's basically a rule of thumb: don't put any low frequency instrument like the bass or the kick on like a massive reverb. Like, don't create the space with the reverb because it takes too much away, and also make sure that the bass and the kick are usually in mono. Other elements like the hi-hats or the claps or the vocals or the reverbs itself from every other instrument can definitely be in stereo, and they can also be added reverb, can also be added delay. Basically, reverb and delays create this spacey feeling. It creates this feeling that our track is not just created in this box. It actually brings wideness to the music, and it's especially when you listen to it in earphones or in studio monitors which have actually stereo information, it's going to make it sound more pretty and more beautiful. This is how the drums sound like completely without reverb. You can hear already it makes a big difference. It sounds more pretty. It creates the space basically. By the way, comment below this video if you think if I should actually release the track or should I just keep it for my YouTube tutorials. Especially in the beginning when I started producing music, I was really bad at like mixing, because usually I put my bass and my kick way too loud in the whole mix. And because I did this, the mix, when I put it on mastering stage and I brought it to 0 dB maximum peak, that's the problem, was that my tracks were way too quiet because the balance was completely off. If I do this, I mean, it sounds good in headphones. If the bass is too loud, the bass takes away a lot of headroom because it has so much energy. So definitely make sure you get the levels right. Don't overdo your bass. Like, definitely just be really careful and just reference your track. Here's a little recap of this video. So basically make sure, first of all, that you're choosing the right sounds, the right melodies, the right instruments, because that basically makes the foundation of the track. If the foundation is wrong, you can have the best mixing skills in the world, it's not going to make it better. The second tip is bring the volumes right. Make sure that elements like the kick or the bass are not too loud. Make sure it evens it out, and just reference your track with a professionally already released track. The third tip is use an EQ, cut away low frequencies you don't need, and also cut away from the highest frequencies you don't need. Make sure also when there's, for example, elements like the vocals, they are more important than like background reverb. So you can cut from the reverb those frequencies away, because you need to make more space for important elements like the vocals. The fourth tip is definitely use reverb and delay, not on every single channel, definitely not on the kick, and maybe sometimes maybe on the bass, but try not to do it in the beginning, because we're going to create this mixing space. We're going to create a room which makes it more interesting, makes it sound more professional. Use also delay for specific elements and automate those things. The fifth tip is use saturation. Make sure that your track is going to be perceived louder. It adds some harmonics, it adds color to the whole track, and it's going to make it sound more professional. The sixth tip is use a compressor. Basically cut away those frequencies and cut away those transients you don't need. Don't overdo it, just do it settle, so you just realize it a little bit, because like that you can make sure that the mix sound is going to be loud enough if you actually bring it to the mastering stage. And the seventh tip is use sidechain compression. You can do this not just with the kick and the bass, do this also with elements like, for example, sidechain your vocals or your synthesizer every time the kick is playing, like that basically the volume is ducked down from the synthesizer every single time the kick is playing, because again, we need to make sure that specific elements which are more important like the kick or the bass punch through the mix and come out, because those are the fundamentals of every single tech house tracks. Hope you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and see you guys in the next video. It's basically the same. It's basically the same. All right.